Hey gang, it's Kelvin from the Real Mensters, and if you are enjoying these deck challenges, please like the video. It helps a lot with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you would like to see different sorts of deck challenges, please comment or join our Discord and let us know there. The link for that is in the description. Also, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can know when new content goes up. As for today's video, we're going to be going back to basics with just one tamer this week, and it's going to be Mimi and Palmon that we're going to be focusing on. So, with that being said, let's jump right into Mimi Tachikawa's DigiDestiny. So as always, we're going to go ahead and start out with the Tamers because they are the stars of the show. So we got 2 copies of Mimi, and we're not really caring so much about her secondary effect to breed additional times during the turn. We only really want her in here because she's a memory tamer. And it's basically just letting us very efficiently get up to our mega. Because you can start your turn by hatching, going into a rookie, going into a champion for 1, going into an ultimate for 2, and then going into your mega, putting your opponent at 3, and passing turn. So in a single turn, you can go from rookie to mega if you have her in play. We still only want her at 2 just because since we're so memory efficient, we don't have to do it in 1 turn. It's just nice to be able to do it, but we don't really want to have her too much. So 2 is a good number for her. So then, going into our options, we've got 4 copies of Flower Cannon. And this is the beautiful Tamers Evolution Box art, which I really love. But so, Flower Cannon in this deck does what it always does in green. It just suspends a card for cheap. We really like that in here, though, because of the next card. And that is 4 copies of Terror's Cluster, which might seem a bit high. Most people don't run it at 4, most people run it at 2, but this deck suspends a lot. And so this is almost the same thing as a Gaia Force, except for cheaper, and it actually takes out some threats that Gaia Force doesn't take out as well, such as Rosemon and Millenniummon. So it's actually a really awesome card for this deck. So that's why we're running it at 4. Next up, we've got our Digi-Eggs, and we're running 1 copy of Fremon. It's not a good egg. Even with as much suspending as we do with the deck, we still don't really resolve that plus 2,000 very frequently. So we're just have it in here so we can draw more when we want to filter and use Mimi. Then we've got 4 copies of Mimi's partner, Digimon. Excellent card. The DP gain on this is really nice, and so it's just good to have it. And there's like actually no other options in green in 1.0, so that's what we have to do. Then we have 4 copies of Goblimon. He is our vanilla. There's not really much to say. You drop him for cheap. Then we also have 4 copies of Agumon. So Agumon, again, we actually really like the DP gain in this deck. So it really does help a lot. And we'll see why when we get later into the profile, but he's just an awesome rookie, and green doesn't have very many rookies in this set anyway, so you kind of have to run him at 4 in most green decks. Then we've got 3 copies of Tentamon. We like his suspend effect, but it's not mandatory. A lot of the time, it's not doing a whole lot just because you have so many other sources of suspend that you don't always get to resolve this. But when it does, it's nice to suspend another little thing that you can then run over to help control your opponent's board, because you don't want your opponent to have a big board presence just because green tends to burn out quickly. So if you let them keep a board and they remove your board, then you're left with nothing, and they can sort of just chip away at you until they win. So then we're also going to be running 2 copies of Palmon, Mimi's partner. Honestly, she's not the greatest rookie, but it is nice to, try to help get your champions by looking at the top 3. Sometimes, though, if you whiff on it, or if you reveal something that you really wanted to see, it feels really bad to send it to the bottom of your deck. So after that, we've got 4 copies of Woodmon. Again, as usual, this is our blocker, so pretty self-explanatory why we're running 4 copies. Not a lot to say about it. The only thing I would add this time is that we do like blockers for protecting our top end, which I will talk about more a little later. Then we've got 4 copies of Kabuterimon, super standard in green. Again, we really like the DP gain, and that 1 to evolve is just absolutely insane. It means that, even if we're going second, no matter what our opponent does, we can evolve twice. So it's really good, and it also means that if we're going first and we evolve, then our opponent only has 1 memory, and unless they are green, they're not going to be able to do more than 1 thing besides evolving a rookie. So then after that, we have 1 copy of Vegemon. Again, it's just for that efficient evolution. That 1 to evolve is really nice. The 6000 DP is cool too, especially if we can get an Agumon under it, because it means that we can swing for 7000 and they can't even block. Or if they do have a suspended blocker, we can go ahead and swing into it. So, super nice. And then finally, for our level 4s, we have 2 copies of Togemon. Again, this is Mimi's partner. Unlike Palmon, Togemon's actually really nice, because when we evolve into her, we get to look at the top 3 and we can get level 5 or higher Digimon. So it means that we are looking for both our ultimates and our megas, and it really helps to sort of fix your hand if you either didn't draw great, or if there's just like 1 piece of your chain that you're looking for. So then after that, we've got 4 copies of Lilymon. Once more, this is Mimi's partner, and her effect to suspended Digimon really helps set up that Terrors cluster that I talked about earlier, as well as other potential effects that we want to resolve while our opponent has rested Digimon. So this is just overall very solid card. Next we have, and this is probably going to surprise some people, 4 copies of Cherrymon. Going back to what I said before about wanting our blockers, to help defend our top end. This further helps defend our top end by just having so many blockers that we, in most situations, can defend our Mega if they are getting targeted for an attack. And then we have, speaking of our Mega, 4 copies of Rosemon. And this, again, Mimi's partner, and is actually really good for this deck partially because of those blockers. Because here's the thing about this. Its effect is that while it's suspended, your opponent suspends one of their Digimon if they try to attack you directly, so they have to try to attack her. It means that she's basically functioning as a pseudo blocker because your opponent usually doesn't want to suspend an extra Digimon, so they'll try to attack into her, but only their big Digimon can attack into her. So if you have a blocker, that means you can block that, you still get to keep her, and now your opponent can't swing into her or into you without suspending another Digimon, and it goes on. And because of Mimi, we can evolve into her and still attack in the same turn, so that's really nice. She is only 11,000, but with the DP gain we're running, it's not that hard for her to be big enough that she can swing over your opponent's Digimon or swing into security without being in too much danger. So we actually really like her in this deck, even though I think she's not great in most green decks. And the last thing I will say about her is that she acts as bait, because when we get our opponent to attack into her, even if she dies, that can be good because it sets us up for our last card, which is 4 copies of Puppetmon. So, going back to what I said, with Lilymon suspending our opponent's Digimon, it facilitates Terra's cluster, but it also facilitates Puppetmon, because the opponent gets their Digimon suspended, then we drop Puppetmon to suspend another Digimon, and now none of their Digimon can unsuspend, so it lets us set up for lethal on the next turn. We have 4 Puppetmon, so we can just keep slamming these down turn after turn until we're finally at the point where we can get lethal. And his effect to gain a memory while attacking really helps with the memory efficiency. It helps mitigate the cost of using Terra's cluster. And in a pinch, we can evolve into him if we don't see our Rosemons. Overall, he's a really useful card here, and he works really well with Rosemon just because of how much, suspending we're doing with her. With our other cards, we can just really make it hard for our opponent to stay alive while we sort of swarm the board a little bit and rush them for game. And so that is everything from the deck. My thoughts on the deck are that, like I said earlier, it has a tendency to burn out, by which I just mean that it'll use up all of its resources really quick because it's so efficient. And because you can do stuff like pump out your eggs with Mimi. So if your opponent has ways to remove all of that efficient stuff that you put in play, you can find yourself in situations where you don't have anything left to play and your opponent is just clearing your board because they've done stuff like, Volcanic Dramon, or Mistymon, those sorts of cards. Or maybe you run into a Gaia Force in the security. All of that kind of stuff can really put you in a bind. So you do want to be really careful about what you're doing. It's sort of hard because you want to control the situation and make sure that your opponent doesn't establish a board. But the issue is that if they start establishing that board later in the game, you don't have as many resources anymore to deal with them, because you put in so many resources early on to get control of the game. So you do want to be really careful about controlling those resources and trying not to let yourself burn out. Otherwise, you are going to find yourself in a pickle. So, with all of that being said, though, I do think it's a pretty good deck for the 1.0 format. It's not the most competitive deck. There's still better versions of green, but I think that you could comfortably take this to a tournament, maybe even a larger tournament with 50 plus players, and you could top with it. You're going to have to get lucky in some games, but I think it's possible to top. I think there's going to be a surprise factor because people aren't expecting to see that many Terrors clusters, and I think that can really help control the game as long as you can manage your tempo and make sure to keep up a little bit of aggression early on so that you don't find yourself near the end of the game with your opponent still having full security. I think as long as you don't let that happen, as long as you control your cards, control the card economy, I do think that you stand a decent chance of doing well with this deck. And I do think it is one of the stronger decks that we have seen in this series so far. And so, that has been Mimi Tachikawa's DigiDestiny fulfilled. See you guys next time. Peace.